Welcome to 10 Minute Spanish, where we present clear, concise lessons of about 10 minutes to help you improve your practical language skills and increase your knowledge of the Spanish language. This is the third and final installment of my series on Latin American Voseo. This video will make a lot more sense if you watch the first two installments before you watch this one. I'll put links to those videos in the description. Those videos introduce the topic of Voseo, what it means, where it comes from, which regions of Latin America use it, and the grammar rules for how to use it. In this video, we'll discuss Voseo and tuteo in the country of Chile. I've decided to give this topic a video of its own because Chilean Voseo is a bit different from standard Voseo, and its use in Chilean society is arguably more complex. Let's begin with a brief history of Voseo and tuteo in Chile. Voseo was the preferred form of familiar address in Chile starting in the mid-1500s when it was colonized by the Spaniards. 3 centuries later, in the mid-1800s, an educational and political reformer named Andrés Bello relocated from Venezuela to Chile and began a movement to eliminate Voseo and replace it with tuteo. Bello and his followers were not successful in eliminating Voseo, but they had pretty good success in stigmatizing its use. It came to be accepted in Chilean education that Voseo was incorrect, and people who considered themselves upper class or who cared about linguistic correctness began using tuteo. On the other hand, working-class and rural Chileans felt no need to change, and they continued using Voseo. In the capital city of Santiago, middle-class people partially conformed to this change in linguistic attitude by switching to the pronoun tú, while continuing to use the verb conjugations of Voseo. In this video, we'll refer to this pairing of the pronoun tú with Chilean Voseo verb forms as verbal Voseo. We'll call the use of the pronoun vos with Chilean Voseo verb forms original Chilean Voseo, and we'll refer to the use of the pronoun tú paired with tuteo verb forms as standard tuteo. Starting in around the 1960s, the use of verbal Voseo began to spread throughout Chile and take the place of original Chilean Voseo. The center of this change was the capital city, Santiago, and over the decades it has come to be common throughout the urban areas of most of Chile. With that historical background, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of Chilean Voseo. As with all Latin American Voseo, Chilean Voseo verb conjugations are derived from forms that are today associated with vosotros in Spain. For example, cantáis gives us cantai, coméis gives us comí, and vivís gives us viví. The final S of both the pronoun vos and the verb conjugations is almost always either aspirated or omitted completely. So vos is pronounced vo, and verb conjugations in all tenses are generally pronounced with no final S. Because Voseo was a stigmatized form of address in Chile for more than a century, there isn't a strict standard for how the omitted or aspirated final S should be represented in writing. I've seen linguists represent it as an S in parentheses, or as an H, or omit it completely. For simplicity, I'm going to omit it in this video. If there are any native Chileans watching who can clarify how the final S is most commonly represented in writing, please leave a comment. In original Chilean Voseo, the pronouns and possessive adjectives are just as they are in Latin American Voseo in other countries. For details, see my second video in this series, starting at about 30 seconds in. In verbal Voseo, the pronouns and possessive adjectives are all the same as in standard tuteo. Chilean Voseo verb conjugations have a very different distribution from those of Voseo elsewhere in Latin America. In the Voseo of the Rio Platense dialects, verbs only have special Voseo conjugations in the present indicative and affirmative imperative. In all other categories, they're the same as standard tuteo conjugations. In Central American Voseo, verbs also have special Voseo conjugations in the present subjunctive and negative imperative. In Chilean Voseo, there are special conjugations in all categories except the affirmative imperative and preterite. In those two, Chilean Voseo is the same as standard tuteo. Here is a sample of Chilean Voseo verb conjugations in various tenses. Again, I've seen the final S represented in various ways with these verb forms, but I omit it here because it's generally not pronounced. This same pattern of conjugation is observable in all verb tenses except for the preterite and the affirmative imperative forms. Those two are the same as standard tuteo. This pattern of conjugation is very stable. The only exception is the present indicative of the verb ser, which has a few regional and sociocultural variations, the most common of which are soy and eri. Soy is derived from the vosotros verb form sois, and eri is a hybrid created by adding a Chilean Voseo ending to the tuteo verb form eres. I confess that I don't know if there's any difference in connotation between soy and eri. I read a study on this subject published in the early 2000s that said that soy was preferred in rural areas and by working-class people, men and older people, while eri was preferred by young middle-class urban people and urban women. Obviously, these are just general trends, and there are many exceptions. Any Chileans who would like to help clarify the use of soy and eri, please leave a comment. Now that we've reviewed the grammar of Chilean Vos, let's take a look at some example sentences. To clarify the difference between verbal Voseo and original Chilean Voseo, let's compare them side by side with one another and with standard tuteo. Please understand that while I have some familiarity with Chilean spoken accents, and I recognize a couple of them when I hear them, I don't claim to be able to imitate a Chilean accent when I speak. Still, I know that many Chilean accents are S-aspirating or omitting, and I'll try to do my best to produce that effect. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estáis? ¿Cómo estáis? Notice that there is no difference between verbal Voseo and original Chilean Voseo unless the pronoun is made explicit. Since the pronoun is often not made explicit, there's often no difference between verbal and original Chilean Voseo. Tú siempre comes solo, ¿no? Tú siempre comí solo, ¿no? Vos siempre comí solo, ¿no? ¿A qué hora entras en la escuela? ¿A qué hora entra en la escuela? ¿A qué hora entra en la escuela? Again, the two forms of Voseo are identical unless the pronoun is made explicit. Tú hablas español muy bien. Tú hablas español muy bien. Vos hablas español muy bien. ¿Vives muy lejos de aquí? ¿Viví muy lejos de aquí? ¿Viví muy lejos de aquí? And once more, the two forms of Voseo are identical unless the pronoun is made explicit. Tú tienes que ir a la fiesta. Tú tení que ir a la fiesta. Vos tení que ir a la fiesta. According to the studies I've read, standard tuteo is the preferred form of familiar address in northern Chile, bordering Peru and Bolivia. I don't know the extent of the region in northern Chile that prefers tuteo, though. Verbal Voseo seems to be preferred in urban areas throughout the rest of the country, and for the past 50 years or so, original Chilean Voseo has been the preferred form in rural areas or by working-class people. But according to some authors, original Chilean Voseo has slowly begun to re-emerge in urban areas. Something that is important to understand is that all Chileans who use Voseo, either original Chilean or verbal Voseo, also use standard tuteo and standard usted in their daily speech, depending on the situation. Let's compare the three forms of second-person singular address in Chilean Spanish. Voseo, either original Chilean or verbal Voseo, is the least formal of the three. It's used when people are speaking spontaneously and are not concerned with formality or correctness. It's used between friends and family members, and is a sign of inclusion and group membership. It's used when people are interacting with peers in a relaxed setting. However, it's also used as a form of impolite address. For example, a Chilean might use Voseo to indicate that they've lost their temper with someone, with whom they would normally use tuteo or usted. While tuteo is still considered a familiar form of address, it indicates more careful or self-conscious speech. It's used to indicate a bit more social distance than Voseo, and it's used in situations that call for correctness, propriety, or giving instruction. For example, it might be used by a teacher when speaking to a young student. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Chileans are perfectly aware that their version of Voseo is unique to Chile, and so they often use tuteo with foreigners and non-native speakers of Spanish. And just like everywhere else in Latin America, usted is the most formal form of address, used to express respect and social distance. It's used in professional settings, between strangers, and when wanting to show deference. There's more that can be said about the nuances of usted, but that's a topic for a different video. Alright, This has been the final installment of my series on Latin American Voseo. I hope you found these 3 videos interesting and useful. If you have any requests for videos on any topic related to the Spanish language, please leave your suggestions in the comments.